Welcome to No Question About That. I'm Ed with Adam today. Lots to talk about, Adam. Benjamin Sesko signed for United. Are we bidding for Carlos Baleba? We had a pretty good preseason. We've got Fiorentina and David de Gea's return to come at the weekend. First, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a little while. You're traveling. I'm all the other way around the world, as I'm constantly reminded. Yeah, I'm going all right. I was thinking just before we started, I was trying to think through, post Sir Alex, how this momentum, this optimism that the transfer window is bringing, especially with the Baleba bid, because it's so unexpected. I know that transfer euphoria doesn't count as much as actually winning football, but in terms of optimism, where does this rank on how you felt in the last decade?
Yeah, pretty optimistic, although I think it's relative to what happened last season. It was such a disaster. In a sense, it could only get better, I think, both from a playing perspective and in terms of squad building and stuff. But I think what we're seeing is the benefits of a year of the new management coming in, the planning that's being put in place, proper football structure, some strategy, which we can talk about with Benjamin Sesko, exactly how they approach negotiations and dealing with other clubs. But yeah, your question about optimism, yeah, it's pretty high. We've signed some good players. There's 3 or 4 if you count Diego Leon in there. We're not sure whether he'll be a first teamer yet or not. And then some, interesting moves to come. We suspect, I wrote my Substack, sorry to plug, nqatpod.substack.com this week on actually the window being benchmarked by sales, because I think it will matter, at least over the longer period. We can talk about some of the mechanics and the money and stuff like that as well. But yeah, feeling good because it was just so bad at the end of last season. 15th, a crushing defeat in the Europa League final. It's just really hard to feel optimistic about what was going on. Now we've signed some good players. We've had a good preseason. I think we can see it all coming together a little bit. And yeah, there's hope. You feeling the same? Gonna crush the vibes?
No, not at all. When you think about the feeling after the Europa League final, what we talked about constantly, which was the financial outlook, I think the PSR projections we were sort of getting from pros and people smarter than us, and how we were looking at the financial situation, the cash situation. We weren't expecting this, how the week has turned. A week is a long time in football, as we know, and so much has changed. And we were so reliant, we thought, after the Brian Mbeumo sale, on sales, and it hasn't panned out that way. We're learning a little bit more about what the installments and the earlier deals has meant. We're learning what the sell-on fees has allowed us to do, what the Jadon Sancho termination money, the Marcus Rashford save wages. James Ducker sort of wrote about that. I think we're going to find out a lot in the new reporting. So that was submitted in early June, and we'll get that in a few weeks, I think.
Yeah.
I think that'll tell us a lot more. I think Jamie was talking about that as well with you, and I'm really curious to see what that shows us. I mean, do we find out more today with the unveiling of the new training ground? Is they going to be unveiled with a sponsor that might provide a cash injection? I think there's so many puzzle pieces we don't have yet. That's why I'm almost increasingly optimistic, because there's something we don't know.
Yeah, so I agree. Yeah.
That gives me cause for hope.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, I'm doing a finance pod with Jamie tomorrow, just so we can break down some of this and in a bit more detail. But I think that those, we don't know yet, you're right, exactly how United have done. But I think it's fair to say that the staged installments on players, which happens anyway, has allowed us to be a bit more aggressive in the market than perhaps everyone thought. The fact that the PSR situation wasn't quite as bad because we'd moved some of the costs into the group, which everyone else does. So it's perfectly fair from a accounting and mechanical point of view. It's signed off by the Premier League, so on, so on, so on. So, and then, as you mentioned, sell-on fees. Marcus Rashford will save us 15 million this year, including the tax. He doesn't earn that much, as we found out. Just going to say, I said, no one believed me, but I was right.
As long as we've been doing it, as long as we've been doing the podcast, as long as you've had me on, you've said it.
Yeah. Not just a pretty face. don't answer that in the comments. All right, so all these things have kind of added up incrementally, I think, to some room. There is some definite risk associated with that. I think they are betting on European football next season. That might include like bets on the Rashford clause being activated next summer, and worst case scenario, Bruno Fernandes gets sold to Saudi. They can still do it in a year's time. Actually, that might be quite likely, and we'll see how they construct their window next season. Because I think we can kind of think about it. If the emphasis last summer was basically on defense, and this summer on attack, is it a bit too simplistic to say next summer might be a real focus on the midfield? So again, we can talk about that with Carlos Baleba. I kind of suspect that might be a year's time, but we'll see, doing the right things here, aren't they? Anyway, we said we'd talk about Benjamin Sesko, the player, not just the accounting asset, as he is now on the books, a £66 million asset, plus add-ons to make it about 73, almost exactly the same deal as for Rasmus Højlund. Excited about the player?
Yeah, I am. I've come around. I've gone back and forth, and I've sort of talked about this as I do on Twitter, but I started off with the excitement of Sesko, was convinced by the more sure thing in Watkins. I really liked what you put out in terms of the yearly cost and detailing the financial risk of signing Watkins, and I think that wasn't really being considered. I think the modern football finance world means we have to think of signings in a longer term thing, and like you can talk about Sesko's sale value down the track, but it matters because players just don't stay at clubs for 10 years anymore. It's very rare. Like you can say that like we've signed our striker for the next decade, but it doesn't always work that way. But we found our striker for the long term. We might have his striker through his peak, and it was hard not to be really tantalized by his potential, sort of the comparisons by player, the all-roundedness of his game. I mean, we certainly saw with the targets for the striker position, they were looking for channel runners and ball carriers. I wouldn't say, like, raw is not the right word. He's not the finished product. Certainly has strengths. His finishing needs a little bit of work. He had a tough season last year. Was also playing a lot, not in a primary role, as that sort of second striker next to Lois Openda. I think there's a lot of context when you look at the goals and things like that, but his metrics are really, really good. So I back in, Ruben Amorim's ability to coach a player like that. Look what he did with Gyökeres. I think that the fit alongside Matthias Cunha and Brian Mbeumo can't be understated. His ability to get on the end of Cunha's passes over the top and in behind, and in Mbeumo's crossing. And then that doesn't even include Bruno Fernandes. So not to mention, he gives us a set piece threat, which we haven't really primarily had in the front line. And we've never really had a rebuild like this in attack ever. Ever. Like
I can't remember a single time when we've never done 3 attackers.
Like no, because we've never really done, I don't know. We haven't really filled needs this way. It's been this shiny toy thing, the really hyped up player on the market. It's a little bit different. And I understand, if we don't sign Baleba and we sign a lesser midfielder or more of a project midfielder, I would say, lower in the rungs of the market. I understand the concerns around not getting a midfielder and targeting a midfielder with that amount of funds. But yeah, like you said, and I wanted to circle back to it actually, is, last summer was defense, and there was always a problem with the fullbacks. This summer is primarily the attack, and it forecasts that next summer, I mean, they still probably do need another centre back, but they can't afford that big spend this summer. Next summer's that central midfielder, maybe a goalkeeper, depending on how Lamens, who seems like the likely arrival, how that works, what happens with Andre Onana in the next 12 months. But yeah, they're taking a long-term approach to it, and Sesko fits that. He fits that long-term timetable. So it's hard not to be excited, but cautious optimism, because he's not going to be the £66 million asset from day dot. More than likely, he's going to have up and down periods. He's going to have spells without goals, and it's probably going to be important for the majority of the vocal fan base to remember that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things with him. One, the profile looks very much like the Amorim profile, doesn't it? I mean, they were chasing Liam Delap earlier in the summer. He made the mistake of going to Chelsea and the human trafficking project that is there in West London. We'll see how that works out for him. But the profile, if you look at the data, looks very, very similar, doesn't it? You could say that Sesko is an upgrade on Højlund, not just in terms of form and personality and types of goals he scores, but he does a few things better, right? He's quicker. I think that's fair to say. And he's a much better player in the air than Rasmus Højlund. We'll see if this means that Højlund's on the way out. I suspect it is 1 in, 1 out. It would certainly help in terms of the accounting and the finances and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, even a loan would make some sense, although Rasmus doesn't earn a lot of money.
I was going to ask,
a fee of some kind.
How do you feel about a loan? Because we had the links from Damasio to Milan, the loan plus buy. And I'm wondering from your perspective how you would feel about a loan that didn't guarantee a purchase.
Yeah, I don't feel too bad if they get a player that comes back confident with some of the skills that Højlund's got, then why not, right? It's kind of a little bit, again, in my Substack, I try to make the argument that it's kind of what kind of club have we got here, right? And it's not to say that one thing is better than the other, but are we a club that develops players or just bins them off if we don't feel like they have immediately returned the value that we want, right? Are we Manchester United or are we Chelsea? And I don't think it's wrong to say we've got something good there in Højlund. I think his confidence is absolutely destroyed, and it's taken a very long time to stay fit, get fit, feel right in this system, get the kind of players around him that would help as well. Not to go back to the old Paul Pogba argument, who's going to unlock Rasmus, right? So
it matters.
There's that. It does matter, right? And I think he would do better this season with Mbeumo and Cunha with him and Fernandes, playing the balls through and all of that. But he's forgotten what it is to be a striker. I think if he can go to an environment, especially in Italy, it's a bit slower. And that's the other point I wanted to make about Sesko. He's come from Germany, not Italy. And I know there's a whole Bundesliga tax thing. It does sometimes work, it does sometimes not, and you could kind of make an argument against Sesko's data to say maybe he only scores 12 or 13 goals this season, something like that. And would we be disappointed? Probably. But translation from Bundesliga to Premier League, much, much easier, much quicker league. In fact, the Premier League is becoming more transitional, tactically more like the Bundesliga. And Italy's going away from the chaos we had 5 years ago and going back to a more traditional Italian, slower, tactical possession-based thing. And I just wonder whether Rasmus would enjoy that for a year. We'll see where he is in a year's time, if the finances work, right? If you can get his wages covered and a £5 million fee, that's all right, And if we're not desperate for cash, that might make a lot of sense. Depends on how Ruben feels about it, how Jason Wilcox, who's the squad builder now, feels about it, and Christopher Bell feels about the man he's brought in. 5 years with the Red Bull group, Benjamin Sesko, and all of these kind of things. So anyway, long way of saying I wouldn't be against a loan.
Yeah, I've been really torn on it. I love the idea of them both staying in the squad, but I understand the financial need, and I also understand the need to get him potentially out of the environment for a year. I think it's okay if a player leaves on loan. It doesn't mean he's failed. And the club isn't quite where it was before, where if a player does leave, it means they're not coming back. He could come back in 12 months. So I do wonder as well with Sesko, does that mean that Xerxes is going to be considered a 9 this season?
Yeah.
It might actually work in some ways for him to come up and be a link-up player with Cunha and Mbeumo, but it also doesn't suit what Amorim sees in his strikers. And so I don't 100% see how that works. Are you guaranteeing Cheeto, Obi more time, which I also don't love? People people have been in my mentions a lot saying, let's loan Cheeto. He's not even 18 yet. Let him play some under-21s football. He was thrown in the deep end out of sheer necessity, like Ruben Amorim was talking about it with all the reporters the other day about how they were having to rest players, play them for 60 minutes because they're playing so much football. And Cheeto was playing because of that. Rasmus Højlund was playing so much football because of that. And that has played a big role, besides the fact he didn't have the players around him, as you said. and destroying his confidence. So I'm not against it. It's just if they can financially afford it, I'd love for him to, if he's up to it mentally, to compete with him for that spot and essentially be Sesko's backup.
Well, if you're doing squad building, if you're Jason Wilcox, I think you probably look at, and you're not the accountant, you're looking at Xerxes and Højlund, and you think it makes more sense to sell Xerxes, right? You could probably get 30 million euros for him. That would be an accounting profit, actually. And that might make more sense, really, from a squad building point of view. Josh Xerxes is clearly not a number 9. He doesn't have all the qualities of Sesko or Gyökeres or any of the other 75 strikers that have moved around this summer. He's a deeper player. That probably means he's competing with Mbeumo, Cunha, Mason Mount, Bruno Fernandes, Ahmad for one of those 2 roles at number 10. We've got a good selection there right now of players who like to play in that role of different profiles as well. And you'd imagine he'd be quite a long way down that list. There's a lot to like about him, honestly, both the personality and his sort of technical qualities, and how he grew through last season and came back from a ridiculous booing against Newcastle, which was probably just frustration with the team rather than him. But I'm not quite sure how he fits. Honestly, that's my general problem. I mean, Mason Mount might be the same, although Ruben Amorim really, really loves him. He has a poster of Mason Mount on his bedroom wall. Yeah, no doubt about it. So, yeah, I think Mount will be staying unless he was a sacrifice to the gods of accounting. But Xerxes might make more sense to sell if you really wanted some cash. But that would be a hard one after a year in which he actually did improve throughout the season.
Yeah, like someone who's prominent on Twitter mentioned that there has been some interest from Italy. We haven't seen much because we don't assume that he's been on the market. It does make a little bit of sense. I'd be disappointed just because you do want to find out, and he's only 1 year in. And he ended the season really well. I know his game isn't based around goals. They never were when he was at Bologna. So I'm keen not to give up on that. But there is that financial reality. So I guess it's a bit of push and pull between the accountancy part and the squad building part.
Mm. Yeah, right. Back to Sesko. I mean, he's going to get thrown in right from the beginning. You imagine, right? He's going to be number 1. I don't know what his preseason looks like. I actually didn't. I meant to go check that, see if he's played many games for RB Leipzig. How fit is he going to be? Like, is he up to the kind of intensity that Ruben Amorim has got the rest of the squad up to, which has been really intense, right? If they've not been playing a lot of minutes, they've been doing 11-a-side games. I think the Athletic reported on exactly what that looked like. So they've had a lot of work. Everyone should be really sharp and fit. Is he there? We'll probably see him. It looks like they're going to unveil him on Saturday. I don't know whether they'll get any minutes. It's a friendly, so we haven't got the kind of registration problem, assuming all the paperwork is now done. And with FIFA for the international transfer and all that, he's a Manchester United player and he could play. Just depends on his fitness. It would be nice to see him for a few minutes, wouldn't it? But if he's thrown in right to the beginning, we're going to get this brand new attack. Now, Bryan Mbeumo may not be fully fit. He didn't really have a proper preseason with Brentford. So, yeah, who knows exactly what it looks like against Arsenal in a week and a bit's time. But very, very soon, we're going to see this brand new attack and what that looks like. And there's definitely, it's very exciting. There's also the real problem, as well as like actually being able to finish chances, is the build up from the back. You know, Onana through the thirds, the inverted central defender, getting into midfield, moving it forward and progressing has been a real problem. Now, obviously, Bruno Fernandes is a progression monster, right? It's like, that's not the problem. It's, yeah, if he knows when to play it short and safe and when to play it long and not the Hollywood ball, which I would argue he did do a lot towards it, especially the end of last season. And can they get the balance right in midfield? Is it Ugarte with Bruno Fernandes? What does that mean for Kobbie Mainoo? Is Casemiro now basically a backup? Is Tory Collier a make-weight in a deal for Carlos Baleba? You know, it might be from Brighton player, very, very good player, just hasn't been able to get and stay fit and get enough game time. All of that. That kind of balance really does matter for whether this new forward line and Benjamin Sesko click straight away. You know, the talent's there. can they create the chances? I was really excited by both Ahmad playing at right wing back, because I think he offers a lot there from an attacking sense, risks defensively. And Patrick Dorgu, probably outstanding player of pre-season, just looks fit, aggressive, overlapping over the outside, putting good balls in, scored goal, all of that kind of stuff just looks like the kind of attacking wing back that's the perfect mold for a Ruben Amorim team. I'm not talking myself into, like, it's title 21, Adam, talking myself into it. But no, but it just like feels like you can construct a narrative that says this looks really good. Now, we get thumped 4-0 by Arsenal on the opening day. We might not be feeling that like that in a week's time, but the pieces look like they're there.
I think they are, and it's like they haven't quite built out the squad yet. They're going to have to rely a bit on youth, as we spoke about with Cheeto and say a Tyler Fredrickson, players like that. Toby Collier does make a lot of sense to go out. I wouldn't rule out a sale at this point, just because it's just an unfortunate potential casualty. Like, I think we all like the player. He eats up ground, sort of just fills a role, which is what you need from your young players sometimes. But there's only 2 midfield positions, and the problem they have is the amount of bodies. Like, people are complaining about, Sekou Kone not playing in preseason. The reality was there weren't the minutes. They were trying to shuffle 5 midfielders through 2 spots. So it was just really difficult. Like you said, Casemiro shapes as a backup. I think with him and Ugarte, they're just purely based on your opponent. There's going to be some games that Casemiro just can't play because of who they're playing. We saw him get run over by Newcastle last season.
Yeah.
Just some midfields he's not going to be able to play against. Ugarte is so confidence-based. Like, you watch him against Everton and then against West Ham and Bournemouth, that was so different. The minute he makes a mistake, he just seems to, it's like the crowd is coming down on him. He can't take it. When he does that thing where he tries to tries to protect the ball, and it looks like he just wants to fall on the ground, like he did that in that game last season that his critics have shared repeatedly on Twitter. I'm not 100% sure where that midfield is going to go. Like, I know that Ruben Amorim's, the way that they play doesn't rely heaps on the ball being progressed through the middle of the field, but you still require it because unfortunately teams just figure you out. But I wanted to touch on Patrick Dorgu because he has offered something we haven't had, because we barely had a left back last season. Threw him in January, and he's just been so impressive. What a preseason's done for him, what some time to adjust has done for him. It's really exciting. And you balance that out with Ahmad, or if he's playing in a 10, Diogo Dalot. It just depends on the opponent. It feels like they actually have some tactical variety now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you were talking about the 10s, I was thinking, when those players, when Mbeumo and Cunha were signed, people were saying, well, we already have 10s. But we've always had this thing where we've worried about what the best 11 looks like. But having a wealth of options is actually a really refreshing change. Like, Mason Mount is a really nice tactical alternative. I thought he did some really nice things in preseason.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from the goal, it's what he does for everyone else. The runs he makes, the little defensive actions. He does things for the team. That's why his managers love him. It's not about the raw stats, his goals and assists. It's all the things he does. He's the perfect sort of team player, So
yeah, I think it's a fair argument about the squad and the variety of tactical options. It looks, for a season that's going to be shorter or less crowded. No European football. We don't know what the domestic cup runs will look like. They'll get someone quite early actually on in the season. That's a lower league side in the League Cup. They won't play FA Cup till January, so it's mostly 1 game a week up until Christmas, and they can play with a 23-man squad basically, with a few youngsters filling out positions. There's basically 2 players for each position. They might not be quite perfect there. Obviously, Licha Alessandro Martinez comes back December, January, we think. Although he's out on the USA tour and walking around, he wasn't on crutches or anything like that. So it takes a while to get up to full fitness for that knee injury. We don't know what he'll look like when he comes back. But, they say there's basically 2 players for each position, not perfect, and some tactical variety.
There is some versatility in there as well. Like, Diogo Dalot's versatility will be really important. Ahmad's, because we don't actually have, it's like you said, we don't have that 2 for every position, but we actually have some versatile players for a change who can genuinely play multiple positions.
Yeah. as can Patrick Dorgu. I mean, we've seen him play over on the right. I think it was a bit unfair, maybe second or third game. He was asked to play at right wing back. And he looks a bit uncomfortable. Ahmad looks very comfortable there, and he's obviously very left-footed. We'll see what happens with him, because we know he scores a fair amount of goals and creates a lot. So we may well see him in that number 10 position against Arsenal, for example, on the only day if Mbeumo isn't fully fit. He hasn't played a full 90 in pre-season yet, so it'd be unlikely, you'd think. So yeah, lots of options, lots to be excited about. I hope, for one, that Benjamin Sesko slams one into the top corner against Arsenal, and we can celebrate him not going there, because he was Arteta's first choice, right? Because the ceiling's really, really high. Yeah, not to be a dick about this, because I had, I offered some reservations about Gyökeres on this pod here, and somehow it did really well on TikTok, and I got tons of abuse about it. I don't know why. I don't understand the algorithm on these things, right? And why that one, reached a lot of people. And my reservations were, he looks a bit untidy a lot of the time, right? Like he feels like a good player, but he scores against the wrong kind of opponents, like the lower level opponents. That is true of Benjamin Sesko as well, by the way. Like, before people get on me, his stats look like a flat track bully. We'll see whether, that higher ceiling, which I think is fair to say, which Arsenal, like, that was what their people were thinking as well, right? Higher ceiling versus now with Gyökeres, probably a guarantee of more goals. Looks a bit untidy, doesn't get in the right positions with Gyökeres. Elite finishing. Sesko doesn't have that yet, at least. And so you can see why, like, the two players kind of made sense for the clubs in the positions they're in, right? We're trying to build towards something. Sesko gets more game time. Arsenal, it's now or never, right? Do or die. They've been third 3 times in a row. They have to. And it's unfortunate for them that City have spent a ton of money in the last 12 months, and so have Liverpool now, and they've probably got two sides that are better than them when they really, really need to stop being the bridesmaid. So you kind of make sense where the players have gone. I think Sesko makes a lot of sense for United, as a player that's building. We hope he grows with us as we go from 15th last season to definitely top 6, kind of has to be. If Baleba turns up, maybe we're chasing top 4. I don't know. Maybe that's too optimistic. But you look at the players in the squad and you go, yeah, sure, why not?
I was wondering, before I go on, what do you think of the idea that Sesko is a bit of a market opportunity because of the striker market? Mm-hmm. Because the options there were more like your Matetas, Wissers, like those bridge strikers to your next one while Cheeto develops, while you find that long-term potential sort of Sesko player in 2 years. Do you think of it as a market opportunity the way Delap was, or does the price sort of rule that out from being a possibility?
Well, he's obviously double the price, right? A bit more than double the price. So, I mean, he was clearly going to go this summer, and United had played this game where they just waited and waited and waited until someone got interested. Newcastle with a patsy. Magic, isn't it?
I've loved it. I've loved it.
The inner child in me has really enjoyed it. Not that like we're rivals to Newcastle or anything like that. I mean, there was that 2-year period in the mid-90s when they were good, and Keegan would have just loved it if they'd beaten us and all of that, and they didn't. They blew a 12-point lead, and so there's that kind of mini time. And you're probably very young then, but that was right in my peak football going years and all of that. So there's that, but I never really considered them rivals because they have no history of winning anything, right? Not for 75 years, basically. But they've just been so petty, Newcastle fans online, and it's just the schadenfreude there of them completely blowing their summer. They got rid of Paul Mitchell because Eddie Howe will not work with. It's just been his entire career, it just will not work with sporting directors. Is one of the reasons why he didn't end up at Tottenham. And if you remember back in the day, right, he just didn't want that kind of model. He's got rid of 2 now. Basically, he didn't get on with Dan Ashworth either. And it's kind of shown. And United have been very strategic. They let Newcastle bid against themselves. They saw the market develop for this player, which they'd clearly identified a long time ago. They have, in fact, had the opportunity to, as reported on the Talk of the Devils podcast, they had the opportunity to sign him at 16. Didn't work out at the time. But as a club, They've been tracking him for ages. Vivell obviously knows him really well. And they just let that develop. And then when there was only one bidder, they bid below market, or below, if Newcastle set the market, they bid below market on both fee and wages. And it's kind of very sweet that he fits neatly into both this new wage structure, which is significantly below what it was, right? And we didn't really talk about that in our planning, because when you think about transfers, you think about fee, wage as your annual thing split over 5 years. And now we should talk about fee structure as well, managing cash. Really matters. And yeah, just very, very sweet that Newcastle just did it for us, really. And there was one player in the market, us, bidding for Sesko, and got, I think, 6 million. When you look across the other players that have gone this summer, it's about right, isn't it? It's a little bit more than Mbeumo and Cunha, not much more. If those add-ons are added up, it's 73. The add-ons, we're told, are realistic. It's probably appearance-based and Champions League qualification. That's what it was for Rasmus Højlund. Those add-ons, by the way, just get even nerdier. They activate in the accounts or PSR, not when they're actually achieved, but when they're probable, right? It's standard accounting practice. Really, really nerdy. I think with Rasmus Højlund, it's really hard they don't break it out, but I think only part of those add-ons were activated for Rasmus Højlund because we haven't qualified for the Champions League. And yeah, market opportunity, yeah, but I think he's the guy they identified, right? If Liam Delap was the real opportunistic one, 30 million for a young player in England, doing really well, probably likely to be a full England international soon, and all of that. That was the opportunistic one. Sesko was like the long-term strategic bet. Maybe they didn't want to spend so much money, but they're clearly comfortable with it for all the reasons we outlined.
Yeah, I think things have just broken the way they wanted to with the money that's come in that time. When you go back again, yeah, like you said, Delap is that market opportunity, but that also opened the door for Mbeumo to be bid on when he was. I don't think that deal was necessarily going to be then, and things just have gone the right way. Arsenal were bidding against themselves for Sesko, couldn't get a deal done, were by all reports getting asked for more. Andy Mitten, like you said, spoke about on Talk of the Devils that Sesko was the top target last summer. He's been in the thoughts of the club clearly for nearly a decade. It's very satisfying for it to get done the way that it did. Just it's just not a competence we're not used to. Letting the market come to them, not forcing it, not forcing bids in on players who weren't committed. All three deals, they knew the player was committed to the club and they made their move then. They've used the club's status and prestige and history in the right way. But it's not just that, it's the project. They've clearly sold them on a project. A team that finished 15th isn't a club that should be attracting players the way that they are. And it's impressive. So, they let Newcastle set the market and they came in and just took the player, and it was very satisfying, like you said, because of pesky online fans and just a fan base that overestimates themselves. So it's great that you're loaded up, and I'm sorry that I'm no longer welcome in Saudi Arabia because of the comments I've made online. But yeah, sorry, but you're just not that club yet. One trophy in 70 years. You're just not there. It's nothing wrong with ambition for the players they're targeting, but clubs are going to come over the top. But that competence with the transfer market, they're being patient. It feels like, within Mbeumo, my argument the whole way is that they wanted to get the deal that worked for them. Even if it meant paying a little bit more, it was getting the deal over the life of the deal with the structure that allowed them to have more flexibility. And I think we're seeing that now. I think there was the impatience of the 7 weeks or whatever it was. But even though he only missed a week of training, they got the deal that they wanted. And it's a small sacrifice because he would have been on holiday anyway. And he was, they've paid a little bit of the price that he didn't do team training at Brentford. It's getting up to scratch now. It sounds like they've got him on a pretty rigorous program. So do you expect to probably play an hour, 70 minutes tomorrow, the sort of similar trajectory of the other players, and wouldn't play 90 minutes against Arsenal?
Yeah, I think that's all fair. Yeah. I mean, just back on Newcastle fans before we drop that delicious moment. I actually think they got it really wrong, and it shows. Like, they haven't got a sporting director, Paul Mitchell, who is very highly rated. in a lot of clubs now around Europe and in the UK left for reasons, right? They're trying to they've got all this money behind them. They can't use it because of the structure of their club is not there yet, right? I do really enjoy Newcastle fans online and talking, in conspiracy theory terms about PSR. United have more than double the revenue. Like,
I've learned a lot about PSR from Newcastle and Villa fans this week, so thank you for that.
They're all wrong, all the way, always all wrong.
Yeah.
But they're bidding for the wrong kind of players, right? They should be bidding for young up and comers who will go with them on this journey. Now they're in Champions League football. You can make the argument they're in Champions League football, right? But this is not a club that has a history of achieving anything. Get there first, then you'll be able to sign the top players. I mean, look what they did with Isak. I mean, he was a very, very good player at Real Sociedad, but they took the risk, they paid the money, and
very similar scenario to Sesko.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And he's become one of the world's elite forwards. Like, legitimately, we'd have loved him at Old Trafford, of course, right? Because he's a really top quality player. Sad for them that they're going to end up losing him probably to Liverpool, right? Or maybe not. Maybe they dig in and go, hey, because we didn't get our Sesko, we'll refuse to do it. That the fact that
PIF are helping Liverpool fund the deal, you could say, potentially.
Yeah. Actually, they bought Nunes. God, the absolute. Here's a real corruption, right? No, it's not PSR, which is a very clear set of rules, right? Whether you like them or not, whether you think it's unfair on ambitious clubs like Newcastle or Aston Villa or Forest or whatever, or you think it's necessary to kind of rein in states and state actors, and also like stop clubs harming themselves through hyper competition, right? The real corruption is Newcastle, Chelsea, 9 PIF, either fully owned or owned by companies owned by PIF. Chelsea with an LP position, like PIF have an LP position, you can say there are firewalls around that and all of that. That's not how the relationships work. 5 players from Chelsea have gone to Saudi Arabian clubs now. Liverpool are now selling. PIF have a stake in FSG, or it looks like they might get a stake in FSG. That's not good, right, for European football. Even if you say, hey, yeah, we've boxed this off, like there's no talk, but like it's clearly not the case, right? Relationships matter, and it's distorting the market as a result. That's the corruption, not PSR.
PIF has already got a deal with FSG in the PGA Tour, so they already have an existing relationship.
Yeah.
They signed. It was last year. $3 billion investment. Yeah. So like I spoke about this. Was it when the Felix sale came along? Those players that were sold, it's not necessarily about the money that they were sold for. It was where was the competition for those clubs to get that fee? Like, Felix never should have had a fee at all in that range. Koulibaly was a disaster. It's don't tell me that there's not dots to connect here. We are just seeing it time and again. And we're seeing in the multi-club model, which I know that we're a part of and probably going to be expanding on, but the multi-club model and state ownership and state interest is really infectious, and it's just spreading like a virus.
Yeah, I get a lot of pushback online when I talk about this. Like, the only states that own clubs are petrostates in the Gulf, right? That's just a fact, right? It's not an anti-Arab thing at all. If someone from one of those countries had come along and was a fully private citizen, not part of a state, and was a bidder for United, I wouldn't have had anything against them, right? So let's say it for what it is here. I understand the politics very clearly. I understand also the financial relationships very clearly as well. And I think it's a cancer on the game. Any state actor would be, because their motives are completely different than a private company. I don't think private equity owning multiple clubs is a good thing for the game either, right? Does that make me sound like a dinosaur? A little bit, but it's the motivations, the profit motivation, one, right? And also the ability to distort markets, two, right? With like the way Chelsea are doing it, they've done all these one-offs with their women's team and the hotel and stuff like that. You can say it's smart gaming of the system. The other thing they're doing, of course, right, apart from their relationships with PIS and Saudi Arabia, is using Blueco and Strasbourg, and it looks like they're going to expand that as a way of harvesting players, right? So they bring all these players in on long-term contracts and then move them around the group, right? It's clearly the vision. It's what City have done to a certain extent, perhaps not as much as we thought they might. But they've used
They got in early, whereas Chelsea are
Yeah.
having to use the loopholes available to them because of the financial restrictions that are in place now.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Carlos Baleba. And United have clearly approached the player, tapped him up through intermediaries. So
always, yeah.
It's always third party. It's such an archaic rule. I mean, it's pointless, isn't it? From that, remember back in the day when Ashley Cole got tapped up by Chelsea for £5,000 a week.
When those clubs actually didn't want to sell players to each other, now they just seemingly do it at will. It's such a weird thing to me how they do that. How the London clubs just swap players like cattle when it used to be like, imagine City and Liverpool and United doing that. It's like City and Liverpool do to a smaller extent. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Carlos Baleba, United clearly approached him, and I don't believe this thing going around that he's only earning 12 grand a week. Actually, I'm sure that's not true. Like, just for the fee he came from, but a super player. He's probably way better last season than Brighton even thought he would be. Good player at Lille, of course, but he's just turned into an all-rounder. Makes more tackles and interceptions and defensive actions than pretty much anyone. Good on the ball. I think he was probably quite safe in the Brighton team last season. Not a real progression monster. I think there's more to come from him. He's physical, of course, 5'10", really built, moves around the pitch really, really well. He's exactly the profile of player that United really needs. The upgrade on Uarte, I would argue. I mean, it would be a big move, both financially and for him, of course. But, you can see what they're thinking, right? That's the missing piece. It's, when everyone, it's not like I had any original thoughts here, but everyone says, hey, you got 5 players for central midfield. I can't find a pair of them that really properly works together for different reasons. He might allow that to happen, right? I don't know what it says for Kobe Mainu. I mean, he would then be, I guess, sort of back up to Bruno Fernandes or, rotation option. Is that fair on him? Don't know. I feel for such a good player, it's a little risky that we're not giving him more game time. Maybe his body, he had 17 and 21 injuries over the last couple of seasons. Kobe Mainu, maybe he's still growing into his body, and that makes sense to only playing for 40 games, including substitute appearances, something like that. But yeah, what do you think of Baleba? And do you think a deal will actually get done?
He's the dream midfield signing, more or less. I think he's right up there. It just shows as well with the way that Brighton got him from France. I mean, it cost £26 million, but if you want to go shopping for a defensive midfielder, France has a shit ton of them because of the style of football there. That is the place to go. And we've seen with Kamara and Monaco was probably the player that I thought we were going to go for, just at that lower financial rung. He's going to make things really pleasant for Paul Pogba at Monaco this season, our old friend. But I think this deal is definitely in play just for a couple of things. One, the pieces we can't see yet that I spoke about earlier. I don't know if there's just something we don't know about sales, if there's an additional sale coming. So if they find a sale for Rasmus Højlund, that opens up more. If they find a sale for Toby Collier, that opens up more if he's part of the deal, because Brighton know his qualities very well. The other thing is that they've spoken to him, so the player clearly wants to come. The other part is that Brighton have a valuation for the player, which I always think is important. I think if there wasn't a deal to be made, Brighton would have made their stance pretty clear. Now, there is quite a distance in that valuation, but the way that I do see it is it might be now or never, because we don't know where United will be in a year's time. So let's just hypothesize that Baleba doesn't go or doesn't come. And in a year's time, City and Liverpool, or like City and Arsenal, Liverpool and Arsenal, are all competing for his signature. The odds of a deal happening then are far less than they are now, just by the competition. I think they could potentially, especially with Liverpool targeting Isaac and having more funds committed there with how much they've already spent, they might actually get a free run at him now if they can move quickly, which it seems like they're trying to. So
yeah,
I think it's more possible than I thought originally, just because of the manner of how they've gone about transfers. But putting in the work does help. like you said at the start of the pod. So maybe it is work for a year's time. But I've got my hopes up. All this summer transfer optimism. And I just think with the way the midfield is, it makes a lot of sense. And I did want to touch on Kobbie Mainoo as well. One of the things Ruben Amorim actually spoke about towards the end of last season and preseason, he's been really spoke highly of Mainoo for one, but also he talked about how he likes to protect his young players. It's something he's historically done, not thrown them in too much. He took his time with Lenny Yoro, and we're seeing his importance now. He's almost too important not to play as the club's best defender. I actually think long-term anyway, in a year's time, that it'll be Kobbie Mainoo and Baleba, just hypothetically if he were to come. But also because of Mbeumo and Cunha, and if Hoyland leaves, those players are going to be switching around positions a little bit. So there's going to be enough time to go around, but also to rotate players. So I'm not too worried about the idea of best 11, if you get what I mean. I think there will be enough minutes. It just might be in bigger games. It might be awkward who gets squeezed out. So that's when we'll know who the best 11 preferred players are. So yeah, I'm not too worried. And I think this is probably the first time we'll see Kobbie Mainoo physically ready for that role.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, I'd be really worried. It'd be a massive red flag if Ruben decided he couldn't find a role for Kobbie Mainoo, right? Just the technical qualities. We know he needs to be a bit more physical. We know he's been on the training program. We'd like to see more ball progression from him. A bit braver on it, get on the ball more often, not 35 touches, but 60, 70. Yeah, he's not Michael Carrick 100 sort of thing, or Busquets 100, but 60, 70, 80, so he can do stuff. We know he's great in tight spaces, small spaces. He's more pressure resistant than anyone else in the club. He's technically very, very strong, right? So, he should be a good fit. He would be a very good fit for Carlos Baleba. That would be a very balanced midfield, very young midfield. But I think, as you said, when you look at the market developing, same with Adam Wharton, right? He won't go this summer. He'll go next summer. City and Liverpool will definitely be looking at him too. He's a different profile, makes fewer defensive actions, more ball progression. Obviously, he's very, very good at moving the ball forward. So different profile there, but both of them would complement United's current set of midfielders right now. Both are very expensive, but Brighton always sell. They just always sell, right?
It's their model.
He's a year behind
Ultimately.
Caicedo. Obviously, they bought him for more than they bought Caicedo for, but Caicedo had 3 years of development. So Baleba's a year behind. I think if Caicedo was, 100 and a little bit, something like that, then Baleba should be a bit less. That looks where Brighton are pitching it. United came in, I think, hypothetically reporting and all that, so we don't really know, a bit lower. If they really are the only bidder in town right now, because City won't find a place for him in that midfield with Rodri there, right? They won't be giving him a development project. United's pitch is pretty good to him, and a fair price could be found. They would have to be confident on some sales, right? Spending best part of 300 million this summer. Whatever you say about the comfort around PSR, we didn't have that cash for sure. Like even structured with 20 and a bit up front for Cunha, let's say 4 even splits on Mbeumo. We don't actually know. I don't think that's been reported yet. Sesko, if they're doing something similar there, it's still adding up to if you add in Carlos Baleba a little bit up front, because Brighton do expect that, generally speaking. If it's 50% up front, still adding up to over 100 and something million pound spend this season. They already had a £90 million commitment, if you remember, to historic deals. As Ratcliffe said, they will be dipping into the credit card, right? We had cash on hand, whatever the position was actually this summer, rather than the last accounting position. It's a trailing 3 months plus the time. So, the position changes over the last few months. And then we had the Bank of America credit line, of which they'd paid some down. So there's like 100.
I was going to say, the 50 million. The 50 million was a surprise on that reporting. So it does give them a little bit of flexibility. Like I said, I just think there's something where we're going to find out whether it's a sale or a sponsorship. And Jamie's been great with this, detailing it on Twitter in recent days. There is a piece of the picture that we're missing, because it doesn't seem like it's possible with the amount they've got due this summer, just on that alone, to be able to fund this deal without it.
Yeah. And Alejandro Garnacho will get sold. It's just what the fee is. It'd be absolutely disgusting if he goes for something like 30 million as the reporting
What's
has
your
been.
benchmark?
Well, it benchmarks Elanga, Madueke, Jamie Gittins. He's not a worse player than those three. He's
I think
just
it's
not.
50 with a sell on.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. That's market price right now for him. You could say, oh, he only scored 6 goals in the Premier League, right? But he had 21 goal involvements across the season. He's not efficient yet as a forward. Actually, data-centric clubs look at players like that going, hang on, he's taking quite a lot of shots and getting in the right positions. We can coach the rest, right? And he goes from a 21 goal involvement season player to a 40 goal involvement season player in 2 years' time. And instead of a 50 million pound player, you've got a 100 million pound player. And it all looks very rosy and you think you've done a fantastic deal. If it's 30 million, it's disgusting. And you'd only do that if you're absolutely desperate and it's cash up front.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? You get all that cash. Like the only reason they would do a quick sale with, say, 40 million or slightly sub is because you're getting a bulk of cash up front.
Yeah.
Like, which would make sense if you were getting a Baleba deal done and you had to do that. I imagine they would probably do it. And I think fans would certainly settle for it.
Much better. Sorry, I interrupted. But much better would be they announced a new training centre. They've spent 50 million on it. It's going to be a world-class facility. The Ineos Grenadiers training centre, of which we have a benchmark, right? Training kit is not there. That was 20 million a year. I think the old Aon training centre was like 15 or something. So 35 million pounds a year, 5-year deal for whoever comes in and sponsors it, whether it's Qualcomm and Snapdragon or some other large blue chip or Ineos. There is the benchmark. That's all that the Premier League PSR rules require for a related party transaction, and they pay it all up front. Why not? No one else would do it. Ineos might.
Do you foresee a women's team sort of scenario?
No, I don't actually. I don't, because it would. I mean, the same with Ineos doing this, but my tongue is in my cheek here, but the same argument can be made for both, which is it makes the financial position of the Glazers, who are still the majority owners, much stronger, and makes negotiations around any future change of ownership, whether it's full or partial.
It's that same equity proposition. Yeah,
absolutely right. And it's why it's hard for Sir Jim to put any money in. He could loan the club money, right? So he could do that. It would have to be at a commercial rate of interest, because Manchester City's victory over the Premier League was only about that, right? In their rounds and rounds and rounds of back and forth on their 115 charges, the one victory they had was that any loans have to be at a commercial rate of interest. So he could do that for sure, right? And it would be a lower rate of interest than the Bank of America credit line, which is quite expensive. But yeah, a training ground sponsorship should be there, right? It would be very high profile. There should be some companies, blue chips out there that would be willing to do that. Would Ineos do it at the top of the market? Just, could. It pulled back a little bit on sports sponsorship, and it's this question mark about how strong do you make the Glazers' negotiating position happen. The other thing is, we're coming to the end of the lockout period, middle of August. Could there be a change of ownership? There could be. I don't expect it to happen right now. This is basically when a third party could come in and start offering, but they'd have to offer at 33 a share, so Jim could match it. I just don't see it right now, but the pieces are in place for that to happen over this.
You didn't see Sheikh Jassim in LA recently with a fan?
No, I didn't. Did you?
No. So apparently,
yeah. Yes, it's that one is not happening and was probably never real. So Jim bid against himself there. All right, exciting times. Quick, before we go, Fiorentina at the weekend. I guess we'll see a bunch of players get full 90 now, more like the first 11 strengths with a bunch of changes. Obviously, as I said earlier, I mean, the Athletic reported that the players that haven't had a lot of minutes have been doing a lot of 11-side games to try and get them up to the same kind of intensity. Training has been as intense as games, obviously not the same thing. Fiorentina in town. I haven't been tracking them really closely. Doesn't really matter, but Dave is coming back to get the send-off he never got. That'll be nice.
Yeah, that's the way I've sort of focused on the game, to be honest. The way that he exited the club was sort of like a disgrace is too strong, but it's right up there. The way he was treated was really poor. What he gave to the club and through some really dark times and being the best player through some really shit years, like a goalkeeper should never have to be your best player. We saw him become the best goalkeeper in the world, and football's changed, and that was not good for him. But it doesn't take away his status, and really looking forward to his return and the reception that he'll get. Over here, we get to watch the game on MUTV, so probably get some really good coverage from that. But no, that's what I'm probably looking forward to. I sort of know what things have looked like in the preseason. All I'm hoping for is a good performance with no injuries. And I'm not expecting Sesko to play, so I'm expecting the Raphael Varane brought out with the shirt. That sort of excitement at Old Trafford. A really nice moment for Dave. No injuries, a week away. I think we'll be 8 days out from the game. No, really exciting run in, and every day matters now. There's just so much to do. We've got the standoff with Anthony. We've got things moving on Garnacho. Sancho just seems to be waiting for Juventus to have the finances to complete that deal. Can't wait to see the back of all those deals. I think that's as winners, a bigger win as anything else in the window is clearing those issues out of the squad. Really enjoying the vibe we're getting from the players. I know you can only take so much from preseason footage and the things that the players and the club put up on socials, but I see a tight-knit squad. You see the things that people spoke about with Ruben Amorim that he would do. Yeah. Gives you a lot of cause for optimism. It's all sunshine and rainbows at the minute, but based on what we copped in the first 6 months of the year, I'll take it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Dave getting the send-off, 50,000 tickets had been sold out as of yesterday. I think they're priced it pretty reasonably. They're going to get a really good crowd for him. It's going to have a little bit of sort of, football aid vibe to it, I imagine. Yeah, they've sold the tickets reasonably. It's in the afternoon, or all of that kind of stuff. They have tended over the last few years to have one game at Old Trafford in pre-season. So cool, it'd be really nice for him. I totally agree. He was, even if it was time for him to leave, the way they offered him a contract and then pulled it away at the last minute, it was shattering for him. I think that's part of the reason why he took a year out. Just reset everything. He'd obviously been at the top level and intense and got a bit of the yips in his last couple of years with United. It was good for him. He's gone to Fiorentina, had a great time, performed really well, reached the European final and all of that kind of stuff. And it will be very good for him to get that send-off. And frankly, United didn't get an upgrade. We thought we were getting an upgrade. Maybe we got an upgrade with the passing and the ball at the feet and the modern stuff, but not really, because
we haven't even seen it.
We haven't really seen it because it just launches it long.
Yeah, no, we haven't. We just haven't seen it. I think it's scared. The way that Højlund scared off people from Sesko is that the way that Onana's scared people off from a modern keeper. Like, if Lamens comes in, that's not his strength either. He's primarily a shot stopper. But for a number two competing for number one, you're not asking for the complete package. But it scared people off going after a Diogo Costa sort of player because of the nightmare that we've had with Onana for half of the time he's been at the club. Because it's also worth acknowledging that he has had a really good back end to 2023-24, and he had a really good start to 24-25, and it was just a December meltdown onwards.
Yeah, and that confidence really matters for keepers. All right, we'll have lots to talk about, I think. I'm going to do a finance pod with Jamie. We'll break down all this stuff in more detail around what finances look like. We may get some news on a training ground sponsor. Who knows? Nothing's leaked out yet as of this recording. And that final, we'll talk about that final game and what we've seen tactically, I think, with Darnish before the season starts. And someone will do a season preview with me. I'm not sure who yet. Adam, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
As always, listeners or viewers, you can find us in all the podcast apps, or if you're listening and you want to watch us, we're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. I even paid Elon Musk for a subscription to Twitter so I could post some longer videos, which I will do. Sorry. He's a scumbag. Don't do as I say. Do as I do. Do as I say. Don't subscribe to that nightmare stuff. Do as I do. Anyway, if you want to support the pod, you can also go to patreon.com/NQAT pod. We do an extra show, or go and buy some stuff from one of our many sponsors coming up. It does help the pod, usual sort of podcast begging, advertising thing. You know how it works. Bye now.